Hi everybody, welcome to School of Scarlet. I am so happy to have you here today. Today we're going to be talking about manifesting through feminine and masculine energy. We're going to be talking about spiritual gifts and your true divine power. So we've been talking about masculine and feminine energy in our last few videos. If you haven't watched those, I recommend you go back and watch those because those videos will kind of lay that foundation for a little bit more understanding here with this video. So this video kind of is a little bit more of a conclusion to those videos and just tying everything up for you in a way that you can see how these energies are the creation energy and are what is sparking life here around us. So we talked about the two energies in terms of feminine and masculine. And I've also described that both of these energies actually interplay with each other and are connected as one. And so these energies are needed to create and spark this apparent reality that we all experience. So we have two energies working together. The masculine, which is containing everything. And if we think about energy, it's containing all of the energy in one localized spot so that it could vibrate in a way that's so violent and so strong that creates a spark that now the feminine can work with all of these ingredients, all of this energy that it's brought together to create something that's going to be radiant. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be something that we can visually see. And this is how we get appearances. This is how we get our apparent reality. So I'm just describing something in a kind of way that I picture things in my mind. But essentially, what I'm describing here is two energies working together. And we really see this throughout everything. We see it throughout humans, animals, plant life, everything. Everything has its female and male counterpart. It's just part of how reality works. So we're going to kind of take a little bit of a journey here. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things in history, some things in my background, and I'm going to tie it all together to show you how manifesting works, really truly works through feminine and masculine energy, and how you always have this power within you at all times yourself. And I'm going to bring you back to you because you are all there is. So stay tuned with me to the end to be really mind blown by your true divine power that you've always had, just never really noticed. So stick with me to the very end to hear that. So I want to start here by talking about Jesus. Jesus was someone in the Bible that was, when I think about Christianity or the Bible, I think Jesus. That's who I think. I don't know about anybody else. And when I think about Jesus, I think love. And when I think about Jesus, I think peace, everything good. Um, Other times when you ask me about something relating to the Bible or Christianity or something, I might have some negative ideas about it, but it's never relating to Jesus. And that is because Jesus was a being that was pure love. And he really understood everything that we're going to be talking about here. And not only did he understand it, but he really did his best at the time through parables, through different explanations to people, through teachings that were, I believe, amazingly clear to people to share this information with them. So we're going to be talking about that here today. And I'm going to bring forth some examples of some things that he manifested and some amazing and miraculous things that stick out in my mind about him. So, for one, was not just a human, okay? Just like you are not just a human. He was a realized being. He knew the truth of reality, okay? So he knew that he and the Father were one. And he clearly stated that. And he shared that message. And he shared it in a way that people could understand. And those who had ears to hear could hear that message. And so when I hear his message, I hear his message. So, but there are those that do not. Okay. And that just, it takes some time to be able to hear that message, but we all will be able to hear it. And because we are all it, that's plain and simple truth. But basically, He knew the truth of reality, which is why he was able to manifest in a way that was so powerful and profound on this earth. He walked on water. He healed the blind. He healed the sick. He healed the dead. He did amazing things like turning water into wine, feeding hundreds with just a few bits of food. So, how is this possible? How is this possible? It sounds like a magic trick. It's not a magic trick for him, because for him, he knew that he and the Father were one. He understood the nature of reality. He understood the energies. He understood all of this. He understood that in a spoken word is how creation is formed. In a spoken sound, in a sound like om, in just a sound, creates a spark, a fusion that begins to spin into a spark of reality of what we see here manifesting into what we visually see. Okay? And it only takes a command from what? From where? From truth, from the divine mind. Now, this mind isn't a mind that's occurring within your body. I talk about going within, but we're going a little deeper in this video, so stay with me. I talk about going within, and I talk about the brain. Now, we're not talking about the brain here. The brain is a manifestation of the big mind, the capital M mind, the ultimate mind. Your body is within that mind. Your body is not just the body. You're not the one here. You are within the mind. You are the mind. You are the imagination. You are what's observing. Okay? So, he knew this. And so, what could happen, for example, with water? With a spoken word, he can command water that he will walk on water. He doesn't even have to hardly speak it. You can actually just mentally do that. It's the same thing. So, anyhow, what happens in that moment? You command water. It begins to manifest in the way, because what is the masculine energy? It's that fast moving, containing energy. So, when you command water to be still so that you can walk, it begins to spin faster. It begins to spin faster. So, its density becomes denser and you can just walk on it. Okay? But right now, everything's in balance. Everything's spinning at the same. So if it's water, it's water. If it's meant to be air, it's air. So everything is kind of in order right now. But as Jesus being one with God, he having that understanding, he can do that. Okay. And how did he manifest water into wine? Same thing. Okay. But the same thing about that is that we have something called imagination. We have something called visualization. We can easily command things. We can also do something called visualization and see it a different way. We can flat out see it a different way. Okay? So I'll give you an example. When Jesus healed the sick, he didn't see them as sick. He saw them in their whole completed self as their highest self, their healed self. He didn't see a sick person. He didn't see a sick person. And he doesn't, no one that is realized sees a sick person. No one that is realized sees pain, suffering, or anything like that. They see the complete self, they see the complete picture. So they don't get hung up on illusions in this moment. If you're pretending that you're a victim, if you're pretending that you're sick, if you're playing into that role as that actor that you're sick and you're clinging to that story, you can do that. But I'm not going to believe you. You're not sick. You're pretending you're sick because I know what you truly are. Okay? I know the truth. I know what's behind the curtain. Okay? And because of that, you're not going to play these games. And so Jesus would see the truth. He would see it as it is. And so it would be. That's how powerful seeing the truth is. We only have to see the truth, and it is. That's how simple that is. And so that's why he talked about seeing the truth. You can actually just visualize things to change them as well. So, for example, wine or water. It is clear, but if you see it as wine, it can become wine. So, I'm going to give you an example of a spiritual gift. Manifestation sounds like magic, like a gift, like something out of this world. Well, it's not. It's just parts of the spiritual laws and things that, not spiritual laws, but the laws of our universe and how things work. So that's just what that is. But anyhow, I'm going to be talking about now about spiritual gifts because it sounds very much like this. It's just bringing you back into all of your gifts, not just manifestation. Okay, when I was growing up in all things, I had never heard of really spiritual gifts or speaking in tongues or any of these things. And so one day I joined a church. It was more advertised as a community church, but come to find out they had more of a Pentecostal background. And so in Christianity, I assume that most denominations have kind of given away the spiritual gifts. So, for example, I had been in a church that they had said that the spiritual gifts were no more, that they were no more. Okay. And so that is why they didn't speak in tongues. That's why they didn't have prophets. And so they explained that most churches were like that. And from my understanding, they are. And so, anyhow, this new church that I was going to, I didn't know this about that church. I didn't know that they had that background. But one day, I went into a counseling session with the pastor, and he asked me if I had ever spoken in tongues, and I told him I hadn't. I didn't really know what that was. It had never happened to me, so no, I hadn't. I thought that that was just something that, you know, that happens to only certain people. And he explained that that is very wrong, that spiritual gifts have always been, that no one has said that spiritual gifts are no more. If that anybody had said that, it would have been to suppress something, suppress the gifts, to basically take something away from someone. He said that these gifts are alive and well. And so he asked me to go ahead and speak in tongues. And I said, what? How am I going to speak in tongues? And so he said, you don't have to do anything. You just get filled with the Holy Ghost. And so he said he would fill me with the Holy Ghost. All he did was a prayer. And we just sat there. Nothing happened. And we sat there, nothing happened. All of a sudden he gets up and he says, excuse me, I'm going to go check on something. And he gets up and he goes into the next room, and his wife was in there, and he comes out with her, and she just sits next to me and holds my hand. And she begins talking in tongues. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my mouth opens and I begin talking in tongues fluently, like just coming out of me. And that went on for about 5 minutes, and then the pastor stopped it. He said, stop. And he held us, and basically, now we're going to talk. And so he talked to me about speaking in tongues and how tongues was something that is very important and something that him and his wife do daily, sometimes twice a day. Something that edifies him, brings him a lot of energy. He's basically an 80-year-old man, but he has a lot of work to do. So anyhow, he energizes with this. And I did feel that energy running through me. So I did feel that. So I thought, wow, this is something I need to do. So I took it home. I did it a few more times. And then I stopped doing it. You know, it's something about not being ready or not the right time that you kind of don't keep on with stuff or something. But anyhow, I let that go. But that was very interesting. So gifts are alive and well. And so, anyhow, I had a young lady come through for a one-on-one session, and she had never been in the Pentecostal faith or Christianity or anything like that. She actually was on the Eastern religion path and in India. And so, anyhow, she was talking to me about how she spontaneously talks in this weird language. And I said, really? And I said, can you do it for me now? And so she began to do it, and it was speaking in tongues. And she described this to me, and she told me that it gave her a ton of energy. She felt a rush down her spine. She also described that children that had autism, Down syndrome, things like that, when she would speak in tongues, they would become very calm, very grounded. And it was speaking in tongues. And so what she called it was light language. And so After I had been speaking in tongues, the pastor's wife talked to me and she said, there is a whole nother world occurring. She said, there's a world that's unseen. You can't see it right now, but it's happening. It's happening all around us. There's a spiritual war. There's things happening. And when you're speaking in tongues, it's clearing things up. It's releasing things. It's straightening out things that had gone wrong in the past. It's creating new paths. You're basically putting out an unknown prayer that you know very well, but your human self doesn't understand. But your divine God self knows absolutely well. So when you're doing this, it's basically uh, putting out a prayer for everything to come back into wholeness and order. So I found that pretty interesting. And in doing so, she said that there's these currents of energy that come that basically don't just benefit the world, they also benefit you. So why not do it? So that's why she had done it. But anyhow, so that's only to say that spiritual gifts are alive and well. When someone says spiritual gifts are no more, have you tried them? Who said that? And what was their basis? Growing up, the most beautiful part about the Bible or anything like that was the miracles that were in most stories, the supernatural things that would happen in each story. And I always had a bit of dissociation, confusion with why those things don't occur today, or why I don't see my parents, or why I don't see, my grandparents, or my family, or my friends, or teachers seeing angels, having babies at 80 years old, talking about miracles. Why isn't miracles all over the news? Why are we seeing all of these other things? It seemed like what was in the Bible and presented in the Bible was like another world. And it made no sense to me, but I still cling to that these things are possible. The one thing that always made me love God was Jesus. So learning about Jesus, or when we would read about Jesus or the miracles or Jesus, what Jesus would say, that was love. That was love to me. And so that is what I would like cling to and like to hear about those stories. My favorite stories were those stories where he would heal people like Bartimaeus and just stuff like that. It was just to me that was the most beautiful part. And for someone to say that those things are no more, how is that so? How is it so? um they made it seem that it was only Jesus now or God that could do these things, or before maybe other people were doing these things or God was doing these things through people. No, guys, these are things are always happening through us. Jesus knew that he was one with God. He said, I and the Father are one. He knew that deeply. He knew that. He had that understanding of reality at all times. He didn't see sickness. He didn't see illness. He didn't see pain, suffering, anything in these people. He saw them as their completed, divine, complete selves. So when someone came to them and said, I'm sick or I'm blind, he didn't see that. He commanded them to be as they are because they are complete and whole. He knew that version of them. So he was able to bring it forth into reality. He was able to manifest it here and now. Whenever he was able to walk on water, how was he able to walk on water? He simply can command that, whether he commands it in his mind or in his voice. When he commands, what happens? There's energy. In sound, there are hertz, there's energy that's released. And in that, it begins to make the sound and then spin and spin and spin and create an energy that is either male or feminine working together. And suddenly there's a spark and we have an appearance. We have a radiation, which is the feminine energy, to what is the appearance that we see here today. Okay. So when he wants to speed up or walk on water, he simply can command it. And the masculine energy that is within that manifestation will begin to speed up, speed up, speed up in a way that's so fast that water, the appearance, becomes dense, hard, and he can just walk on it. It's easy. Now, it's not easy for us unless we are completely aligned with the idea and the truth of I and the Father are one. Because did you know that you are not separate from God? You yourself are one with God. So if you completely align with that, and align with the reality, understand manifestation, then all of us should be able to do miracles. All of us should be able to do spiritual gifts. Now, I'm going to share another story with you around spiritual gifts. At that same church, they would have a prophet come about once a year. And this prophet would come and he would speak to everybody. He would kind of do like a sermon, and then he would kind of open it up to spirit. He would call on only certain people to relay messages from God. And I had never really heard about something like that. But when I had heard about it, I was told it wasn't true. I was told it was false and blasphemy and that those people were just in it for the money. And so I never really paid attention to it or listened to it. So the first time I went with my husband, and he, almost every time they called on him, but this time they called on him. And I was there, and they had brought up a situation that only he knew. No one in the church knew because, as a matter of fact, my husband was skeptical. He wondered if the pastor would meet with the prophet beforehand and let him know about certain people, so he would only call those certain people and talk about these certain things. Well, he was called on this time, and it was about something he had never talked to the pastor about. No one knew, and as a matter of fact, I didn't even know all the details about it. And so he was prophesied about this, and he said, these, do you remember that this and this happened and this happened? And I was like, what is he talking about? When we got out of there, I asked him, and he said, yeah, all of those things happened, and I've never told anybody. And he told me what it was all about. And it was something he had to release. It was something that needed to be spoken. And so that was very interesting. So that sparked my mind to think, oh, there must be something really there. But anyhow, I always went to these things, regardless of my beliefs. I went to it just to see what happened. Well, I never really got called on. Then all of a sudden, one time I got called on. Like, this was years of going. And then one year I did get called on, maybe 5 years after being in this thing. And it was the simplest message. While some people would get like a conversation and just more information, mine was just like three simple messages. It says, you are safe with your husband. That was it. That was that message. You are safe with your husband. The other message was, there are books in your future. There's a school in your future. And you have never been crazy. Or there's four things. And so I thought that was so weird. I think the last one came on another time. And so that was really interesting to me because all of those things really hit home now. Honestly, when I heard those things at the time, I thought the prophet was fake. I thought, oh my gosh, what in the world is he talking about? Like, none of those things relate to me because they didn't at that time at all. None of it. But now they do. As a matter of fact, I was trying to make sense of it, and I thought, well, maybe that means I'm going to go back to school. And at the time, I had a little bit of anxiety going on. So I thought, oh, well, maybe the crazy part means, we all have anxiety. So it's not something I have to worry about that much. So that's what I equated that to. Little did I know that now looking at things, that prophecy was very interesting. Okay. The first part, or I don't know which one was the first part, but the part of me having books in the future. It's interesting, but I've now published 3 books in a journal since that time. And I had no intentions of writing any books at all, nor desire, nor did I even read books or care about it at that time. And now I have these books, and I'm continuing to write these books. Okay. Now, the other part about it, that you're safe with your husband. Well, I don't remember having very huge doubts about being safe with my husband. Maybe other people did. I don't know. But for me personally, as every moment passes on, uh, my marriage is solidified in a way that I feel safer and safer. The only thing that is shown to me is a divine masculine, a very protective person here with me. So I'm definitely shown that I'm with a person that is very protective and safe. That's for sure. So that was shown to me, and it continues to be shown to me in many ways. The other part about it was that I was going to have school in my future. Now, I really thought, well, this means I'm going back to school, and I didn't really want to go back to school or anything like that. But look what's happened now. My YouTube channel is titled School of Scarlet. And my deep down intentions and heart's desire is to have a school where we go into our heart's desires and we do heart work and just kind of reorient ourselves to our heart and live from that space. And now that is becoming my reality. I have my courses going and the school is going. It's a virtual school, but little did I know at that time that that was even possible. Do you know at that time there was no such thing as a virtual school? I mean, there may have been virtual like college courses, but for people like myself to have an online school, it wasn't that easy or possible. And now it's very easy. And so things have definitely changed in a lot of ways. But what's interesting is that I really didn't believe that prophecy was real. I didn't really believe that spiritual gifts were real. But here we see life showing me that spiritual gifts are real. Until now, since I've had my awakening, of course, spiritual gifts are real. I completely understand it now. But at the time, when you're going through these things, you don't know. And what I'd tell you if you're going through this is just have an open mind. Have an open mind through the process of whatever it is. Have the mindset that anything and everything is possible in this world. And this world will show you that, and it'll be very beautiful. But if you close yourself, if you limit yourself, you're only going to have certain experiences. You're only going to see certain things. And it's going to kind of be sad in a way, in my opinion, because life is so full, life is so grand. We actually see something very interesting happening. We actually see something very strange. It seems that a lot of people are staying back, and things like science are moving forward way more in advancement than humans themselves. Humans want to stay back. They don't want this new information. They don't want to know about physics. They don't want to know about science. They don't want to know about the truth of spirituality or anybody's experience here. With YouTube, we're able to experience so much more of humanity and talk about all of these experiences that humans have had. People are getting on here and sharing experiences like I have had and seeing that this is pretty quite normal. I mean, it's not happening all the time, but it's happening more than we think. And yet people want to, put their head in the sand and act like it's not true and these spiritual gifts don't exist and that they don't have the power and that they have to follow these rules and wait on this savior and do these things to get to this place. Um, no, 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 no. Everything is here and now. You have all the power you always have been. So I want to share a very beautiful story with you here and now. And again, this is coming from my background of Christianity. I think it's the most beautiful story. So I'm going to share it with you. I actually find that a lot of my followers here on YouTube are not Christians and never have been. So when I share some of these things, they ring very true because they're not just true for, they're true for humanity. They're true for everybody. So I want to share it with you. So it's the story of the prodigal son. And I actually want to kind of rename it the story of the two sons because I'm going to pose a question to you at the very end. The story of the prodigal son, we'll start with that. That way I can kind of go my rhythm a little better. But it starts with two sons that were the sons of king. And the king had these two sons. One was the oldest, and he worked around there. And he didn't work that hard. He kind of didn't really like it there. And, he was kind of a little bit of a troublemaker and this and that. And then all of a sudden, then there was another son. There was the other son who was the oldest son. Okay. And the oldest son, he was very well mannered. He always followed the rules. He did everything he was supposed to, all of the work. He was very respectful. Well, one day the younger son decides that he has had enough. He doesn't want to be living in that kingdom anymore. He wants to go out and do his own thing. And so he goes and asks his dad for his inheritance early. He wants his inheritance so that he can go live his life and travel and do whatever he wants. And you have to remember that in those days, that was actually very, very disrespectful. As the younger son to ask for your inheritance, or anyone to ask for their inheritance, much less the youngest son, early was like a slap in the face to your family. Basically saying, you don't matter to me, I'd rather just have your money and leave you. And so the father gave it to him. And so the son left and he went off and he lived his life and he did all of the things like partying, spending his money, maybe being with prostitutes, doing whatever he wanted. Now, I want to stop right here and kind of back up. This story was originally told by Jesus, and he told this story to tax collectors and businessmen that were in town that were kind of judging him for sitting with so called sinners or people of the streets, prostitutes and stuff like that, and seeing him as maybe that he was like them. Anyhow, the son was out there spending all of his money until he was left penniless. He had no money. And then there was a famine on top of that. So everything was just going horribly. And he needed to get food. He needed to get some way to eat, some kind of money. So he was looking for work. He couldn't find anything except for cleaning up after pigs. Now, again, you have to remember the times. In those times and for that culture and everything, cleaning up after pigs was the lowest of the low. And when I say the lowest of the low, they wouldn't even touch or eat pig. I mean, that was the lowest of the low. And to clean up after one, that was the worst. So he was doing that, and then he decides that he needs to go back home and possibly he could ask his father to work in his home as a servant. So he decides to go back home, and he's on his way back home. And as he's walking closer to the home, the father sees something from afar. He sees a man, and he thinks, "Is that my son? Could that be my son?" And he makes him out. And he says, "That's my son." And so he asks, the servants and people around there, "Go get my son. My son is here. Go get him the nicest coat. Go get the fatted calf, and we're going to have a celebration. My son is home. He was once lost, but now he is found." And so he runs and he greets his son with his arms around him. And the son is like, "What is going on?" He was expecting his father to hate him, to disown him, to say, "No, you can't work here," or "Yes, you're going to be just a servant." But the father says, "Come, son, they're getting your robe. We're going to have a fatted calf. We are so happy that you're home." And the son says, "Father, I'm so sorry for everything I've done. I have no money. I've spent my inheritance. I've spent everything. Can I work in your home as a servant?" And the father says, "No, son, you are now home. Let's get you your coat. Let's get you your food. Let's get you inside you. Let's celebrate." And so the father brings him in. And while all of this commotion is going on, the other son is seeing and hearing all this, saying, "What is happening?" And he asks him, he says, "Your brother is home. Your brother is home." And he says, "But why is everybody celebrating?" He says, he asked for his inheritance early and he's home. Why is everybody celebrating?" And he says, "Because your father is so happy that he's home." And so he goes and asks his father, "Father, what is going on? Why are we celebrating for our brother? He took his inheritance and spent it all, and why are we celebrating?" He says, "Son, you have to see your brother was lost and now he is found, so we must celebrate. That is the ultimate celebration." And the son is very confused. He says, "I have always listened to you. I have always followed the rules. I have always done what you asked and worked here and been a good son to you. Yet you have never celebrated for me. You have never slaughtered a calf. Why?" And he said, "Son, come in and celebrate. Your brother was once lost and now he is found." And so the story ends there with the other son outside of the doors, waiting to see if he comes in. So I think the question to the tax collectors and the question to you is, will you come in to celebrate? Do you see the beauty in being lost and being found? Do you see the beauty in living a life? Let me pose you a question. There's two sons here. Which one are you? One son, the prodigal son, had it all, but decided to do it his way, ask for his inheritance, offend his family, spend all his money, get lost in the world, do drugs, do prostitutes, do all kinds of things, lose it all, then come running back home to ask to be a servant in your own father's home after having to have worked as a pig farmer, cleaning up the lowest of the low, just being the lowest of the low. To be suddenly, you're thinking you're going to be just that, the lowest of the low forever because of the decisions you've made in your life and the mess that you've made. To go back home, to realize that you've always been welcome home, that you've never lost anything, that you've always had it all, that it is your birthright, your divine birthright. You have never been a servant. You have never been a peasant. You have never been a sinner. You have just been pretending to play this game. This whole time you've been pretending, but you've never been those things. And as soon as you come home, you're going to be welcomed in because you're not those things. You are it all, and you can't ever separate from that. So the prodigal son realizes and goes through this experience to learn that. And that's almost like the dark night of the soul. I kind of talk about that in a video I have called Die to the Self Now. And so it's going through that process, and you kind of go through it in life pretty much unconsciously to return back home to your truth. And in there, you find peace and love because that's all there is. Now, the other son. The other son is a son who has worked very hard. He has followed all the rules. He has done everything his mom and dad have asked. He has basically followed the rule book of life. Whatever his culture has asked of him, he's done. Whatever his religion has asked of him, he's done. He's followed these things thinking that these things will lead to happiness. These things will lead to everything that he wants, the acceptance and love of his father, only to find out that it's not enough. He doesn't seem to feel celebrated. He doesn't feel appreciated. He doesn't feel worthy. His father is not acknowledging or seeing him through all of his works. He becomes bitter. He becomes angry. He becomes confused, and he begins to separate himself by not coming in to celebrate. So he's standing outside of that door. He can easily walk in and be in celebration. He hasn't lost his inheritance. He hasn't lost his father's love. He hasn't lost anything. The only thing that's separating him is his own ego, his own mind. So, which brother are you? Are you going to be the brother that has now realized that he is home? Or are you going to be the brother that is outside the home, thinking that they are separate somehow, but really they're not? That is the question, and that is a beautiful, beautiful story that Jesus shared with the tax collectors. So I ask this question to you now. Which brother are you? And will you come in now to celebrate with me, to play in this beautiful kingdom, to play in this beautiful Garden of Eden, heaven, love that we have here and now? Or will you deny it? Will you say it's not true? Will you condemn it? Will you separate yourself from it? Will you fear it? That's the question. So, we're kind of talking about manifesting here through male and feminine and masculine energies. And we're talking about spiritual gifts because all of this ties into what's happening here. It all ties into what we're experiencing, how this reality is being manifested. So, really, you are the king and queen at all times. You can easily come into the kingdom and sit on your throne at any time. But if you decide to be that peasant, if you decide to be that beggar outside the door, then that's your choice. So you have to see that these things are your choice. These things you decide, you allow. So we are never a victim. We only allow ourselves to be in that victim mentality. We only allow ourselves to carry on those stories day to day. Each moment is truly born new. And that is the magic and the grace in everything. And in the story of the prodigal son, in every moment, you can be completely lost in the dumps, out of here, just the lowest of the low. And in that same moment, you can be found. Do you see the power in that? Do you see it? So if you don't see it, or if you need some help getting through that or coming along that journey, you can do that. You can do this alone. You can do this through many different organizations, helps, groups. You can join many like-minded people out there and have a support through this. following your heart, being your true authentic self, um, realizing the truth of reality. And you can also join with me. I offer one-on-one services, one-on-one sessions, and I offer a course, and the course is designed to do exactly that, to reorient you to your divine true self, your sacred heart, where everything is. So if you like that, if you want to do that, I do have that in my comments and in my description. So give me an email if you're truly interested in following your heart. I'm here to do this with you now. Um, you have all the power. You always have. You've never been separate from God. Just like Jesus knew that he and God were one, you and God are one. You're never separate from God. That is why God is in everything. That is why everything is beautiful. That is why you can't separate from God. That is why God knows everything. That is why everything is alive. This is a beautiful revelation. This is a beautiful insight. Don't let it go. If you feel your heart opening in this moment, begin to follow your heart. Don't let this go. Don't let the world push you back down into thinking that you need to follow all these rules, that you need to do all of these things to be worthy. You're worthy in every moment, and you're found in every moment. I love you all. Please share this video. Get it out there to those that need to see it. I love you all. Subscribe, give me a like, and that helps the algorithm get going and sharing these videos. Thank you so much for watching.